apologize for a typo. If we could approve the agenda, if there is such a motion in a second. Item number 10, I have a typo on there. That should be, rather than Fund 23, Fund 29. It's still the correct name of the fund, but it's the wrong fund number. That is on me, and I do apologize. Another request, we had a little bit of change in operations. If I could also request, Mr. Chair, if you could entertain possibly items number 10 and 11 at the front end of the agenda. Our new AS400 system, the new computer arrived today, but there's some problems with it. So if we can do those at the front, I can get some MIS staff back on that project.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'll go ahead and call this November 2nd meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. So agenda item number 2, proof of notification. Mr. Langreich, was this properly posted?
Yes, we were.
Okay, great. And then there is a quorum present, so sounds like we have Supervisor Luck and Chair Brewer online. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then we've got 3 of us in here. We've got Mr. Seep and Ms. Gentis and myself, so that's 5 out of 7. And I heard from Mr. Cooey and from Mr. Turk that they wouldn't be able to attend today. So agenda item number 3, agenda approval. So
I'll move for approval.
I'll second it.
Okay, and this is a move for approval with those changes as noted. So we'll move agenda item number 10 and 11 up before agenda item number 5. And then we'll also change agenda item number 10. So instead of the number 23, it says the number 29. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. You haven't approved prior minutes yet, Sean.
Working on the agenda right now.
Okay.
That's next on the agenda.
Right.
Okay, so all those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. That motion carries. We have an approved agenda. Agenda item number 4, previous meeting minutes. We had 2 sets of minutes. The first set of minutes from September 17th is just a corrected version. We don't need to approve that. It just has the roll call votes added. And then the second set of minutes is from our October meeting. I'm looking for a motion to approve those.
Chairman, I move.
Okay, motion by Seep,
I'll second.
second by Brewer. Ms. Dole, I just want to say good job on the minutes. I appreciate they cover everything and are succinct and just grab just a little flavor of the discussion without going into too much detail. So I read through those this morning. Really appreciate that. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those say no. That motion carries. We have minutes approved. Agenda item number 10, expenditures from audio video fund number 29. Mr. Langreich.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to recommend paying 2 invoices from Fund 29 Video Conferencing Fund in the total amount of $1,112.21. Background on this item is Richland County established the Fund for Video Conferencing Expenses years ago. To spend money out of a fund requires approval by finance, and that's established through the committee structure document. There are 2 bills that will need to be paid out of this fund. The first is a bill for training on the new video conferencing system. The judge was unable to attend the initial training, and the second training was requested. The training was held at the cost of $780. The second bill for a new UPS for equipment. When there's power surge and the power dip, the equipment has been resetting and has to be reprogrammed. So this power flux is not only causing an increase in MIS workload, but is not good for the equipment. Requesting this purchase to protect the county's investment, a cost that is $332.21. And I would defer to Director Scott, who I believe is on for any further questions, Mr. Chair.
Is this in the adopted budget or not? It's a little unclear from the financial review section at the bottom of the cover sheet.
If I may, it's in Fund 29 is a fund that's set aside for video conferencing expense. It's a non-lapsing account, so there are funds in there. It's not necessarily, we do put money into there every year, and so yes, we don't anticipate this cost as a budgeted cost per se, but it is in the funds that are allotted.
The monies are there. They're in 29.
Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we're looking for a motion to recommend paying these two invoices from Fund 29.
Linda, I so move.
Okay, motion by Gensis,
I'll second.
second by Brewer. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Invoices can be paid. Agenda item number 11, purchase of an upgrade to our virtual server platform.
Mr. Chair, this one gets a little, kind of a little jargonish, but motion to recommend purchasing VMware or vSphere Essentials Plus Kit, the VMware vSphere Standard Accelerator Kit support for a cost of $10,880. Background on this one, Richland County servers run on a virtual platform known as vSphere. We are requesting to upgrade the platform to the next level. This upgrade will allow us to upgrade servers and move them while they are up and running, preventing downtime for users and lost productivity. The movements can take 20 plus hours to move, so it's significant downtime that is mitigated. Our licensing is already purchased through JCOM Technologies, and this is simply an upgrade to the currently owned version. So getting quotes is not indicated. You will not need that. This is in the adapted budget underneath the following fund and account number. I would defer to Director Scott for questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to purchase this at a cost of just under 11 grand.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Okay, motion by C,
I'll second.
second by Brewer. Is there any discussion on this one?
The only question I have, I see that's in the adopted budget. So, Barb, is it easy to tell a whole year in advance all the upgrades and all the things that you're gonna need?
Not really. We do the best that we can. There have been several things. It's kind of a moving budget, and we do the best that we can throughout the year. You know, and as things come up, sometimes we just have to push back another item so that we can bring in what's needed at the moment.
Hey, anyone else? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so then we're gonna roll back to agenda item number 5, American Rescue Plan for Early Childhood Education and Child Care Providers Grant, application review and recommendations.
Mr. Chair, two possible motions, one being a recommendation, the other one being a opportunity to adjust that to what the committee best sees, most sees appropriate. First is the recommended motion to recommend grant awards to providers as illustrated through option 2, which we'll review, and recommend resolution to the Richland County Board award grants to these identified providers in the amount specified, and to task administration with releasing funds and obtaining expenditures for future federal reporting. The other option for motion language here today is motion to recommend grants awards to providers as illustrated through option of your preference, and to recommend resolution to the Richland County Board to award grants to these identified providers in the amount specified in the task administration with releasing funds and obtaining expenditures for future federal reporting. There could be other option languages that go into this, including movements of time and places for decisions, as well as the amounts. This is kind of an open, evolving thing, as we've never quite done this before. So the background on this item is in reviewing the intentions of the eligibility of the grants. Again, we had a grant application that was released out with the intentions of the county to promote new, expanded, or enhanced early learning services, including pre-kindergarten, Head Start, partnership between kindergartner programs and local education authorities, or administration of those services. We also have on there then new and expanded high-quality child care, provide safe and supportive care for children. Our grant eligibility that we had specified in our grant language was to be physically located in Richland County, to be a state Wisconsin-regulated early childhood education or child care provider. Demonstrate funds will facilitate bringing the facility or operations into regulatory compliance, and then be able to demonstrate with documentation and or developed a business plan how costs incurred are related to enhancing safety and mitigation of the spread of contagion, or how costs incurred will expand services to underserved populations of Richland County. Our applicants, in response to our advertising and solicitation of the available grant funding, Richland County received applications from 5 local area providers expressing their plans to utilize the funds in delivering expanded or safer child care services. A decision matrix is attached below, capturing the basic elements in which the grant application referenced. Applications will be presented at the meetings if they are desired, and a walkthrough of each applicant's goals, needs, credentials will be presented by the assistant to the administrator, again as requested. So to kind of preface here, the information that we released out is a generic kind of decision matrix, and we left off the applicants' names off of our, and we just have applicant 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for the sake of giving the committee the opportunity to entertain them without knowing this, the name of the name or the owners of the businesses, if that's how you choose to proceed. We'll say that the applications are, of course, public record this time, and they are disclosable. So if there's something that you wanted to see and to view, that's fine and appropriate. In regards to our county board rules, though, any types of information that we do review and see by the committee, though, we're obligated then to make sure that we post onto the internet, which the transparency factor is there, but again, it's not to hide or to keep anything behind the veil. Again, the mindset was to allow then the committee to entertain solutions without knowing what the name of the business is or who the people are. Okay. So kind of working through the decision matrix, and I'll just kind of tee this up, and then I'll turn it over to Cheryl to maybe talk a little bit more in depth of anything that I miss. So we had our 5 applicants. The criteria that we identified off of our simple, off of our application process was regulated or certified, the amounts that they're requesting, whether or not they're currently opening or operational, how the utilizations of the funds would be handled, and what expansion of services are. I then had Cheryl she broke down kind of 2 major courses of actions which seemed to be most appropriate. Our funds that we had requested in, of course, went over the authorized amount that we appropriated towards it. We had $335,000 of appropriations. I think our total here is $449,000. So the first course of action that's provided to you today as an option would be to do a distribution kind of based on a formula of percentage by amount requested or amount needed. The second option on here was kind of taken in context of those that are currently open or close to open, funding them at the 100% of their proposed needs to increase the child availability, and taking our 2 largest requests and reducing those down. And I think their requests got reduced down then from 100 to 72% or so, 77%. So the option 2 was kind of seeing of how do we get the most bang for our buck in expanding capacity at the nearest time frame. And that's kind of, again, administrative bias as we talk about the financial constraints in the counties and trying to promote economic development and all those types of bits and pieces. The third option on here is a blank option, of course, which by discussion, committees can make movements and actions on how they would like to parcel it for the providers themselves. Again, having this being our first kind of go at trying to issue out a grant, in hindsight, a discussion on kind of talking about priorities and values and making a decision matrix kind of based off of those types of elements would be something, a learning point moving forward. But at this point, we have applications, we have folks that are already providing and are looking to get into the business of providing. We have kind of a limited decision matrix here based on the criteria of the grant. So I would kind of defer it then to yourself, Mr. Chair, if there was more questions you had of Cheryl, who has reviewed each application on the details of those, perhaps decision points on more information potentially that you would like to have, and in what direction you'd like to go with this, Mr. Chair.
So we do have until December, our self-imposed deadline. This committee could reconsider this issue in December if we decide we want more information today. Is that correct?
The timeline we have in place to award grants was the December 14th county board meeting. Yes, and we can move that. We could move beyond that. Impacts on how it might meet these businesses with their different business plans and lining up financial obligations to also match that. I don't know how that would work with any types of banking or funding sources of without it being released, it would be hard for me to believe that it's not backed until you get a county board resolution, but there might be impacts there. But the bottom line is yes, the grant funds were not intended to be released until decision on December 14th.
Okay, so we all know then if we have questions today and if it's not possible to get them answered within reason, of course, we've got a little breathing room here. So with that, the committee members have questions or comments on this? Any preferences? Mr. Seek, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Can you go ahead and hold that microphone a little closer to you so folks online can hear you too?
Yes, can you hear me now?
That's a lot better.
Okay, thank you. I'll put my eye closer. You mentioned that there were 5 applicants, some of whom are existing. Are all of them existing? No, one of them is not existing. Is that correct? In other words, 4 of them are in operation now. Is that correct, sir?
We have 2 of them that are currently open and operational, and then we have 3 of them that are looking to utilize these funds to get their facilities and themselves in compliance to become in operation. Is that
Good. That's helpful. Now, secondly, have all of these applicants submitted an application that meets the criterion that you outlined to them, so that the requirements of the application, have they adequately fulfilled them with the information we need?
Yes, I'd let Cheryl kind of expound upon if there were assumptions made.
So 2 of them are currently licensed. The third one, number 5, is currently working with Health and Human Services. Stephanie Zon's currently working with her to get certified or registered. 2 of them will be registered in the first 6 months of the year, but yes, when I went through the checklist that we asked for, they all provided that information.
And I'm sorry to interrupt the train of thought, if I could, very quickly. Just in there, we did have one mistake preference. If you can look at applicant number 5, in their utilization of funds, I think we had on there ages 8 to 12, and the correct answer is 6 weeks to 12 years. So if you can just make note of that. So I'm sorry for breaking the.
I have a couple more questions. Now, each of these applicants have to meet certain state standards in order to get their license, right?
Repeat that, please, into the mic.
Each of these applicants have to meet certain state standards in order to be licensed. Is that correct?
I'm going to refer that to Stephanie if she could answer those questions. And I don't believe that was a requirement in our checklist.
All right, thank you. Mr. Langrick, in the beginning, you said we have 2 options, and then you later mentioned a third one. The 2 options in
Mr.
terms of.
C, I'm sorry to interrupt, but should we just give that person from Health and Human Services, Stephanie, a chance to answer that so that we can go in order here?
Well, I didn't know if she was online.
Oh, yeah, I can see her right behind you on the screen. So, yep, if you could just introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Yeah, Stephanie, if you could just introduce yourself and your role and then answer his question.
Sure. Hi, Don. Long time no chat. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Stephanie Ronfeld. I work at Richland County Health and Human Services. And until recently, I was the economic support manager. I am now the business and financial services manager. However, I still wear the hat of child care certifier because we don't have anybody else trained to fill that role. And so just make sure I understood I don't know that I understood the question. So you wanted to know if the people that are regulated that applied, have they met state requirements, or can you repeat it?
My question was, I assume that each of these applicants, in order to qualify, would have to have meet certain state standards in order to be licensed. Is that correct?
Correct. So, right, there's a whole list of a whole checklist that we would go through. So like, for example, the person I'm working with right now, there's a whole checklist that I would go through with her and do a site visit. You know, they have to meet requirements of background checks and all kinds of other wonderful things.
So it's incumbent upon you or staff, someone from Richland County, to make
It
that
depends on
decision.
what level they want. If they just want to do certification and just watch 3 children, then I would do that. So like number 1 and number 3, they would be doing large group daycares, large licensed groups, and those there are it's a state entity that would do the licensing with that. But it's a similar process, right? Somebody would get together with them, go through this whole checklist, do site visits and whatnot. So
Well, it seems-
yes, in the end, in the grand scheme of things, yes, they have to meet a plethora of state criteria to be regulated, to therefore then be eligible to receive the funds or whatever.
So these proposed operations, especially those that don't exist now, would not be opening up or operating without this federal money, right? Probably.
Correct. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like
Yeah.
if you read
So
the
it seems to
utilization
me
of
that
funds, they
this
wouldn't be able to open it.
$400 and some $1,000, nearly 500,000, isn't it?
Yeah, 338. Yeah.
Oh, I heard the number 400,000.
Oh,
In any case, this is a big help to our community and to working parents and certainly to our educational system. I'm hopeful that is a value that we will see in terms of the motivation of each of these organizations.
Okay,
I don't have any more questions
Great,
right
let's
now.
go ahead and move on to someone, Supervisor Gentis, go ahead.
First, I think these are all things we really want. So 1 and 3, which need to construct their buildings. What I don't know is how do they need the money to get started, and I think that's what we're here to make sure it happens. How do we make sure that they utilize that money? How are we going to have accountability?
We would have to put in context with the award and the resolution forward to award them some types of insurance on that it's going to be used for what it's intended to be used. How strict we get with that in demonstrating and all those types of things, we can reach out to trying to find more language on it. We'll have to, through the nature of the grant and us reporting back up to the federal government on our requirements, we're going to have to show proof of invoices and expenses and those types of things, showing how the money came from the federal government and transferred into services available. We get into situations where we're giving monies out in the context that folks are going to be utilizing those to get in compliance to provide services, and something happens and it doesn't happen. Trying to go back and recoup those funds then becomes another challenge, and legalities and such that may involve, like with most types of programs, the more detailed it gets, the more administrative kind of elements are going to have to go in place to enforce compliance. So those are all good questions, and it kind of not really knowing what types of needs were going to come from the community forward. When we said we had a grant, some of those things were kind of unforeseeable. But we have an opportunity with awarding the grants to try to put in some of the language to ensure that the intentions are being met.
Okay, let's see, Ms. Luck or Mr. Brewer, do you have any comments or questions on this? I think what's before us today here is we need to give staff some guidance on what our feelings are on option number 1, number 2, or number 3. So does anyone have an opinion on those 3 options? I should ask. I'll ask it that way.
Mr. Chair,
Yep,
this is
go
Melissa.
ahead. Yep.
I guess I would lean towards fully funding the ones that are currently open to get, as many openings in daycares as soon as possible. Plus, they're already open. We know they're there. We know that there are facilities that are currently operating. So our risk as far as what happens if one of these others that are not currently open doesn't follow through. So I would lean towards funding them fully and then dividing up the rest amongst the ones that are not. Is my thinking at this point.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Others with opinions on the three options? Knowing that option number 3, by the way, is, more of us creating
Right.
a different option. I think that's what Supervisor Lux falls under.
I like what Supervisor Lux said.
Okay, Mr. Seat? Sounds like your mic's not on.
Mr. Chairman.
On though.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, now we can hear you.
Mr. Brewer wants to speak behind me. So, what I wanted to say in response to Ms. Luck, which is, I think, a very valid point. We have an organization that's in business and their experience. But would that connote that they're in an area where they can afford to stay in business because their customers or their clients or their families can't afford to support them? On the other hand, are there areas in the county, low-income areas, or poverty-stricken areas, that may be more in need of this than those that are ongoing and successfully funded? I think that is a factor to consider, since the intent, I think, one of the intents of this federal money is to reach down to communities and to reach out to those who are in need of financial help. So perhaps there's a community in the county, maybe it's Viola, maybe it's Cazenovia, maybe it's Lone Rock, maybe it's right here in Richland Center. But I do think that we need to circumspective about being fair to this and not just funnel this money to the areas in the community where people are more well connected and well to do.
Okay, thanks for sharing that, Mr. Brewer. Thoughts from you?
My only concern is that if we reduce the amount available, maybe on a pro rata basis or however we're planning to do it, would it alter the decision on the applicants? Would they say, well, I have to have the full amount or I can't proceed? That would be my concern.
Okay, and then thanks for sharing that. And then I think my main comment on this is, I think it might be buried in the utilization of funds column, but one of my main questions is how many additional kids would each one of these serve? So, yeah, you want to go ahead and answer that, Ms. Dole?
Number 1 is going to be, it's going to be a rolling amount. So they're saying 50 over 3 years. They're not giving us a count on how many starts immediately. And in talking to Stephanie, I believe if they're certified, it's a 1-to-8 ratio.
No, certified in-home is 3. They can watch 3 under the age of 7 that aren't related to them.
Okay.
Licensed in-home is the 1-to-8. So that's where number 5, I think what we're going to do is we're going to fast track her to get regulated, and then she'll work with licensing to move up to the 1-to-8. Yeah.
So 1 really doesn't give us an answer other than it's going to be 50 rolling. Number 2, they're increasing their child hours. They're not saying if they're increasing their child count.
Which, if I may on that, increasing their hours, more than likely they would take more children, because you can only watch 1 child for so many hours in a day. So it's possible they're looking at maybe doing a second shift or something.
That was my assumption. Number 3 is more, some cosmetic changes. No child count increase. Or, I'm sorry, that was number 4. Number 3 is they're going to be building a building. Starting out with 1 coordinator, so it could be 8 and then ramp up after that. That's going to be a full year out. Number 5 is planning 8 children, and that should be ready within the next couple months, I believe.
And I know number 4, I know that there's no necessarily expansion per se, but I think, I don't know if, how many people on the board understand the history behind what happened when COVID hit. Is a lot of these providers couldn't stay in business because of all these additional rules that got put into place as far as, you know, the state required additional safety measures be put in place. So I think that provider is trying to at least stay in business while providing the safety measures that might be added because of COVID or whatever might end up happening in the future. So I just wanted to throw that out there to not overlook that part of it, even though they aren't necessarily expanding. We don't want to lose them either. So because of COVID.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for answering that. And just
sorry, I didn't know if it was appropriate for me to do that, but I wanted to get that in there.
No. Yeah, we're glad to have the information.
Thank you.
So it sounds like somewhere around 70 plus kids, depending on timing and all that. But
Mr. Chair?
2 questions oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. When you're done, I just have another question.
I was going to summarize, so I think now's a good
okay.
time to jump in.
So my question is that this doesn't actually, this adequately answers the question of access to daycare, but this doesn't actually talk about people being able to afford this daycare. I think they're 2 very different things. So, I mean, I don't think we can control what they charge, right? I mean, that's not within our purview, but so I think we just need to be clear that we are not really providing a necessarily affordable daycare. We are providing an opportunity for daycares. At least that's my understanding. And that's different than saying that we are providing affordable daycare.
Access, right. And affordable, and what the one thing about becoming regulated for all of these, and if they're able to become certified or licensed or whatever, or regulated for the umbrella term, is then these entities, then these businesses become eligible for things like Wisconsin Shares, which is a program that will actually, it's a subsidy for families that if they're found eligible for, they can apply for, and we can help. So whatever they charge, we would offset that through this shares program. These entities would also then be eligible if they're regulated, like if we grant these funds and they become an open and operating facility, then they're also eligible for the food program. They can get reimbursed for the meals for these kiddos that they're watching. So there's a lot of positives to getting these entities open and up and running and under the as being a regulated provider. So you're right, though, it's accessible versus affordable. So, but hopefully giving them the access, and then we can provide the affordability through these other.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I just want to say, yeah, we're not trying to solve all the problems with childcare with this, but we're just trying to distribute some of these federal monies to open or expand facilities. So there's certainly other discussions about affordability happening right now, even at the federal level. So, Mr. Seat?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 questions. Is it appropriate to ask whether or not there's a distribution of these sites around the county, or are they?
Okay, so I'm just going to step in here because I was going to summarize what I was hearing and just ask staff if they could answer these questions for us and then get back to us so we could postpone this till December. So the first question from Mr. Seat was where are these located? I think trying to spread out the need geographically is the question there. So that's the first one. And then the second one I heard was from Mr. Brewer, and it was, would a reduction in the amount of the grant funding request change the minds of any of the applicants about whether or not they wanted to pursue opening or expanding their facility? So I'm just looking for answers from staff on, can we answer one or both of those and then come back in December? I think the responsibility of this committee would be then, if we've got our questions answered, then we need to make a decision in December. So just wondering what you all think.
I think those questions are feasible enough to answer. I guess I would want to know then today too, though, if we feel like we're going to be comfortable with just those questions answered and being able to make a decision based on this matrix, or you folks feel like you would like to be able to review those applications in person. You then would be, of course, then exposed to the name of the organization and those types of things. And there's nothing wrong with that. The whole context was just giving you the ability to kind of stay a little bit more unbiased. So if you'd like to be able to have access to all the information in preparation for a decision next month, we can facilitate that easily.
And fair warning, you said, what, they're a couple inches thick, all the applications?
So, I think there's some had some very healthy business plans. A couple of them were thinner, but yes, there's information there.
Okay, so how do committee members feel about that? Is this information going to be enough to make a decision in December?
No.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, Ms. Luck, go ahead.
I would say the only other added clarification that I would want is, I don't think I want to see all the applications I'm at this point, but I guess I would like kind of a solid, how many more kids can you accommodate with this money, or is it just that you'll be able to stay open, so you'll be able to accommodate however many children you're already having? I think that clarification would help me.
Okay. So that kind of gets us up to 3 questions. And so the one I asked that Ms. Dole answered, it would just be, I think, kind of almost double checking with the applicants, or just kind of seeing if they can solidify what they mean, or just define that just a little bit better.
We're putting that in context just to make sure of adding or expanding, or as Steffi had mentioned, on just putting things in place to retain and continue operations. Is that kind of the 2 pieces?
I think so, because we might just need a little descriptor around each one. You know, sure. If this one is 0, but otherwise I'm going to close and we'll lose 10 spots, we'd also need to know that. Is that right, Supervisor Luck? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay,
great. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. C.
Yes. We're getting at some of it here. I think what this committee, whatever body makes this decision, needs to have, I think, a very clear list of criteria by which we evaluate these applications. Who would prepare that list? So whether it's the committee or whether it's the land grant or whom. But I think we have to be very careful not to be subjective. I think we need a very clear, in writing list before us of criteria with a definition of each of those criteria items.
So we got a few criteria that they've listed out
Yes,
in this chart.
we have.
Our questions are there additional criteria that we've just hinted at. Are there any other criteria that you think, Mr. Seat, staff should also consider when they're reviewing these applications that you want to add to the list December?
Well, certainly the history and financial viability and the skill set level of the folks that are proposing this and who are going to be operating it. I would think, however, that the best source for establishing criteria are experienced professionals like Stephanie and others who could give us an objective criteria by which we can evaluate. But their skill set, their history, their experience, and perhaps we have a couple who are starting from ground zero, that doesn't eliminate them as viable candidates by any means. They may have history and a skill set that's very attractive.
To answer that quick, Don, as far as their skill set and the criteria, if there's required training that they have to do, there's all kinds, that checklist that I was talking about. So that, I mean, I could definitely share that. But right, to be regulated, they would have had to meet all those criteria. So the question you're asking, would they meet those criteria for the purposes of the grant then? Yes, they would, because they would have had to have met them to even become regulated. Did that?
So
Nobody
we
said
would
that,
need
right?
the advice of experienced staff like Stephanie to consult with.
If they weren't, if they didn't, we call them fit or unfit is what we determine. If we determine them fit, then I guess you could say that they're determined fit for the purposes of the grant.
And have you reviewed all these applications, and would you, at least at the onset before they've gone through the regulating process, are all fit as you would, as you're phrasing it?
Have I? I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
not. I have not.
Okay.
No.
Okay, but in order to actually open, they would need to fill those criteria.
Yeah.
They don't have to fill those criteria to get the money. They just have to fill those criteria after they get the money and open their center. So
Correct.
before
And
they
then
can
that's,
open-
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I'm understanding now.
Yeah. And
So
you
I think what Mr. Seep is trying to say, I don't know if I can summarize this right, is can you kind of predict the future? Can you make a good guess or a good estimate about the skill set level and the financial viability of each of these operations? And can you as staff make a judgment call on which ones you think are more or less ready? Did I get that right, Mr. Seep?
Yes,
I
I think it has to be objective.
would think their business plans would have really gone into detail on that too.
Thank you.
But can we predict that if we give a business $150,000, will they be open 5 years from now? No, we can't guarantee that, but
Yeah.
we can't. I mean, you know, you can't guarantee that with any business. So then that's where you would build something into, you know, I think there's more of a risk if you give them the money and they never open up, right? The one that says they're going to open in the fall of 2022, you'd have to make sure you have something in place that if they don't open up, then they got to pay that money back, you know. So,
Well, we make
that's
those
out of the realm of my knowledge. That's just, you know, all I know is I'm working with somebody that really wants to become regulated to help out the community. And
I think we make those judgments in good faith.
Yep.
In terms of awarding these grants. We must give people the freedom to fail as well. Otherwise, you'll never succeed. I had one final question for Mr. Langbert. You didn't specify the amount requested. Was there a reason for that?
The column
By the individual applicants.
the third column
I
has,
added it up and I read it off. 477 grand.
Yeah.
So that's the total.
That's the total requested, but we allocated 335 grand, so that's
Yes.
a shortfall.
I'm talking about the individual applicants.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that
This one asked for 150. This one asked for 75. Did we have that?
Yes.
it's all there.
I didn't see that.
Second call.
Well, thank you. I don't see as well as you do.
Okay, so let's let staff get a chance. I want to know if it makes you nervous or not, that what's being talked about as far as kind of evaluating the business plan and viability. I think we need to clear that up before we.
I guess I would say with us, we solicited an application out kind of very broadly based on kind of more of a needs, like what are your needs kind of a thing, really than having different criteria on there on what we're going to evaluate for. So my concern would be at this point, some of those applications might talk to the variables that we wanted to try to evaluate. Some of them may not. I almost feel like at this point, it feels like maybe more like relating it back to like an HR hiring process where we're almost at a point where we have applications and maybe the committee wants to consider interviews with the folks, be able to tease out the questions directly with the providers as an option. Again, I would just have, I wouldn't want to see somebody that we evaluate without having the information, or they weren't given an opportunity to know what the criteria was, so they couldn't address it in their application and feel like they were shorted and they felt like they met that variable. So that would be a concern that I would have on essentially kind of trying to move the goalposts after we receive the applications. Not that we can't reach back out and ask people the questions, but I mean, I've got 3 and then an idea of like trying to do best judgment on criteria for evaluating business plans, but I don't know where everybody's mindset again on us is that affordable care versus just access to more care and those types of things that everybody might think is a more appropriate thing to consider.
May I respond to that?
I think so, but we got to move on
I,
here.
I
So we
understand that, but I think Mr. Langrick has a very valid point there about the possibility of interviewing. We're accountable to all of the people in the county, all the taxpayers. This is, after all, taxpayers' money. And should we award these, make these awards sight unseen? I think that some people will say, hey, they let those people have money and they didn't even know who they were, didn't even talk to them. And I think there's something to be said for that kind of accountability.
Okay, so if we do go down that route, I think we need each member of the committee to be able to voice their opinion about whether they, as a committee member, want to schedule a special meeting and do all those interviews, or if we want staff to do that work, and if we want staff to make the recommendation. So let's just go around the room and see what people would prefer. Wants to go? Yep. We know what Mr. Seep wants.
Well, I just changed my mind. I wanted not to see all the applications and to be more objective. I guess I feel that the staff of Health and Human Services and have more knowledge on this, and I would trust their doing the interviewing, and we're setting the criteria of things we want to know. So I would I don't mind if you want to do it, but I think they should do the interview.
Okay, what about folks online?
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
I would go with the staff recommendations. We as a committee, we just don't have the wherewithal and the time to do this.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Luck.
I agree with Linda. I think that the staff has more of the expertise than we do and more of the knowledge. And as long as they know what questions we have in order to ask those, I'd be comfortable with them proceeding and it would be more efficient. I agree.
Okay, and I certainly agree with that too. I don't want to do an extra meeting interviewing all the applicants or going through the applications myself. I think that's why we hire staff and why we have them here. They've got the more expertise than we do. I think I'm going to go ahead and we did talk about a couple other questions before the staff were okay looking into. So I'm going to make a motion to
May I have 20
postpone
seconds?
further consideration of this until our December meeting, pending further information from staff.
May I have 20 seconds before the motion's on the floor?
Well,
Mr.
I make the
Chairman?
motion to postpone. Does anyone want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's seconded by Supervisor Gentis. So, Mr. Seep, do you want to speak for or against the motion to postpone?
No, I'm all in favor of postponing, but I would like
Okay.
to make a comment in conjunction with that.
Well, I think we got to move on. So we
I
got a
asked you
full
for
agenda.
20 seconds.
Yeah, if it's on the motion to postpone, you can speak.
It's not on the motion to postpone.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion to postpone? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to postpone, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion to postpone carries. So we'll pick this back up in December, and Mr. Seep, I'm sure we can talk more about this afterwards. So
Well,
we've got a full agenda here. So
I understand that.
moving on to agenda item number 6,
20 seconds is not.
use of
a
Fund
discourtesy.
75 for Viola Park well.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to allow use of Fund 75 for expenses on drilling a new well at Viola Park. Background on this item, as part of the Fund 75 borrowing, $13,000 were allocated towards the Viola Park well project. The Parks Commission had previously considered reallocating towards a stairs project. At this time, the Commission has directed resources towards gathering bids for drilling a well. Bids will be opened. This was drafted prior to it, but bids were open last evening. With a meeting, and a recommendation will be coming forward to the meeting today. Action from the commission is anticipated at that meeting yesterday. The contract is anticipated then for possibly over $10,000. If it arrives at that, it would have to be county board action. And we have conservationist Kathy Cooper here to discuss actions from yesterday and the request then for use of Fund 75.
Okay, there we go. Now it's working. Apparently not tech savvy. The commission met last night and we have we had a quote last month. Technically, it's over 30 days old. So, and I contacted them and they haven't responded back. That was Cuba, and they were taking off we don't have to pay the prevailing wage. So they had $1,000 for that. So theirs was $8,092. That included the pump, wiring for the pump was included in that. Then we got a bid, and it, that the committee opened last night, and they looked at this other one from Sam's. It was for $5,720. It does not include the pump, does not include the wiring to the pump and the inch pipe that needs to go down. And they work with a business here in town to do the installation of the pump. And I've talked to that person this morning. They're going to get back to me how much it is to put the pump in. So I don't have those numbers yet.
Where we're at though is the commission wants to move forward with the well. But it is going to be utilizing Fund 75. So if there was action from the committee to utilize those funds for that purposes, not to exceed the amount of $13,000, it could be turned over to Parks Commission through Conservationist Cooper, and then the authorities on that, if it stays below $10,000, I would be able to work with Conservationist Cooper and blessing off on.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get a motion on the floor to utilize Fund 75 or up to $13,000 to install a new well.
So move.
Okay, motion by Seat,
Second.
second by Luck. Any discussion or questions on this?
Yes.
I have a question too.
Okay, yep, Supervisor Seat, go ahead.
Kathy, did you put out request for bids for the installation of the pump and the wire to the piping?
No, we didn't. There was a request for estimates, from different companies because there's not much,
We're underneath the threshold that requires us to do a request for proposal for a property or public property.
Except that Sam's doesn't they're the lowest bid, except they don't do the installation.
They do the installation. They just don't. They work with a local entity to put the pump in.
You don't have those numbers.
No, and I'm hoping to have them. He was going to go out, look at the one we have at Rockbridge, and then get back to me. But he didn't have it back to me by the time I came to the meeting. The other thing we will have to do is we'll have to hire somebody, an electrician, to run the wire, the electricity from the pole to the well, but we can't really get an estimate on that until the well's installed, so they know how many footage. And they'll have to do some rewiring in the existing box, because we had to disconnect the box because we had somebody tie into that box, a person who was quote unquote camping at the park, wired into our box. So we disconnected that a year ago or so.
Okay, did I answer your question, Mr. Seat?
Not really. You brought up another question about the electricity. When a well is drilled, there has to be electricity there as soon as the pump is installed, because the state requires testing of the well before anything else can happen. And that means electricity has to be in place to ignite that well with electricity. So I think those are issues you need to get worked out.
We know that, and we haven't. I was told to find out how much the well was going to cost, and we're working on. We're working on getting those. We'll have to work with a couple, talk with the electrician to get it out to that, but it's under the threshold of actually having to get bids because it's separate contractors, my understanding. Correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's going to be two separate deals. So yes, it's going to be two separate contracts, two separate deals. It doesn't fall in together to require us to do.
But, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, let's let Supervisor Luck go first, and then we'll go to you, Mr. Brewer.
okay.
Kathy, I just have a question. My understanding is the reason that we abandoned the previous well is because of nitrates. So what assurance do we have that when we drill this well, it's not going to just be contaminated with nitrates and not be usable anyway?
It wasn't nitrates, it was bacteria.
Oh, that's even worse. So
But that would,
same question.
yeah, it's the same question. We don't know. That's been some of the commission members' concern is they could not get, and it could be the well design, it could have been the casing was rotten, you know what I'm trying to say, it was old enough that it was falling apart, bacteria got in that way. We don't know. I don't know anyway. I know Don was actually on the committee when it was abandoned. He may know more.
Yes,
So, but it was bacteria. They could not get the well to test.
Let's let Mr. Brewer go, and then just wrap around, make sure everyone gets a chance to talk, and we'll wrap.
Well,
up.
I think that bacteria was caused by flooding there, wasn't it, in that area? And my question is, would this well, in the back of my mind, I remember it being said that the well head would be 10 feet above the ground level there, and it would be impractical. So tell me if I'm wrong there.
I have no idea about that 10-foot thing. And then,
Okay.
it wasn't the flooding. It was something to do with the well itself. It was not that it flooded.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and Mr.
I
C,
can
you
add
had
to that.
one thing you wanted to add?
yes, I was familiar with that because I was on the committee at the time. It was E. coli bacteria. And the only way they can approach that is, first of all, they'll drill a well, they find water, they might be down to 150 feet. They test the water, doesn't pass the test, it means they have to have electricity to test the water. It means they're going to drill deeper. They may have to drill 300 feet, 500 feet, to find pure water. That's the whole story here.
Yeah, and this estimate is, both of them are based on about a 100-foot depth. There's no guarantee that it's not going to be, like Mr. Seep said, supervised, it may have to go deeper. We don't know. So if anybody else has drilled a well, you don't know how deep it's going to be.
Mr. Chair, can I ask another question?
$13,000 will go a long ways.
Okay, yep, go ahead, Ms. Luck.
I would just, Kathy, can you give a little background? Why did the committee change or the commission change their mind? My understanding was they did not want to put the well in. We didn't think we were going to do the well. That's why they wanted to spend the money on the stairs. But now, why are we back at the well?
They were prioritizing their budget, and they were having a lot of other problems with the park at the time. There were squatters there with campers, and they were trying to get rid of 2 or 3 problems at once, and they thought if they shut off the water, maybe less people would be in there camping.
Okay, let Ms. Cooper answer that.
It was about a 50-50 of who really wanted it, and a couple of them were like, I don't know. So they thought, well, as this has been going on, they thought, well, maybe we need, if nothing else, we don't do any turn it into a campground, at least have some water available for users that are at the park.
Okay, so yeah, I do believe, me personally, I think there's a little bit of risk with this, but I do remember also that a big reason why we couldn't get rid of that person who was illegally camping there was that we couldn't turn it into an official campground, and we couldn't do that unless we had a water source for folks. It has something to do with DNR regulations. So,
and Mr. Wendell's at our last one. He goes, I don't quite agree with that, but
okay,
it's 2 different opinions by 2 different.
we get different opinions all the time. It does happen.
Yes,
It's natural.
Mr. Chairman,
Just a second. I do think that the issue of whether or not to put a well here there are some people in the Viola community, and I think Mr. Carroll was on.
Yes, he
Yeah,
was.
he is on here. He's our county board supervisor for Forest Township, which includes the Viola County Park. You know, there's some interest in further developing outdoor recreation opportunities. I don't think that we have 100% guarantee on this, but at the same time, you know, not making any investment in the park, I think it is a bad idea. Drilling a well, it's a lot like doing these things at home. You can't always get a guarantee, you know, that everything's going to work out, but sometimes you have to try something to move along. So, Mr. Brewer?
Well, Mike, can you restate the motion? The motion is to
allow
up to $13,000, is it not?
That's correct. And it's to allow use of Fund 75 for that purpose.
Yes, I'm all in favor of that. Let's do it.
Okay.
And I did hear from Mr. Mathis in the Viola area for about 45 minutes about this issue.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I have one more question.
Yep, go ahead.
Kathy, will the wellhead be placed well above flood stage down there? Because it is not far from that area that does flood.
That's something we'll have to work with the well driller on. When we go out there, I'll have to go through, and I can work with Mike on the floodplain map, seeing where the flood areas are there, and we can work on that.
Okay, because anytime a wellhead gets flooded with contaminated water, that's an issue. So we would want to make sure we don't put it.
We have it up high enough that we wouldn't have that issue. Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, well, we got a fair amount of discussion in on this, so this kind of releases you all if we get an affirmative vote here. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So now you got $13,000 to work with to see what you can do out there.
Okay.
Go for it.
Thanks for coming today. Agenda item number 7, overages on room charges for training and conferences, veterans service.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to approve payments of room charges for the October 11 through 15 Wisconsin County's Veteran Service Officer Association training for charges over the government rate. Background on this item is the Veterans Office needs to attend a minimum of 2 conferences a year. There was 1 room per employee. The charged amount was $95 per night. At 4 nights was $380. The government rate, which we have the language that we have in our handbook, we've deferred to the state rate, which is $82 per night. For 4 nights, it's $328, asking for payment of $52. The contract that was worked out with the association and the hotel was for the $95 per night. So asking for payment essentially of the extra $52 to CVSO Karen Knock, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to that effect for $52.
I move for approval.
Motion by Seat,
And I will second.
second by Brewer. Scared to ask if there's a discussion on this?
Yes.
$52.
Mr. Langrick, you mentioned that there were 2 employees, there were 2 separate charges then?
That was for the total of the nights for 4 nights at $95.
So that was for 1 employee, the other employee didn't rent a room? $95 a room. You had 2 employees at the conference.
Is this going to affect your decision on how to vote, Mr. Seat?
Well,
Because I think you could handle some of this.
well,
around
I'm
the
just
veterans
saying
commission.
that doesn't cover, there must be another bill somewhere.
There's 1 room per employee. The charges here are for Karen Knock for her stay there. So it was $95 per night. The other was additional information.
I certainly approve that.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, thank God, that motion carries. Agenda item number 8, 2020 audit report.
Mr. Chair, looking for a motion today to accept the 2020 audit report and forward the report to the county board. Johnson Block has completed the county's 2020 audit. The documents are enclosed. They were in your folder and not pasted on the website. This item is intended as a brief presentation to introduce the audit results to the Finance Personnel Committee. Committee will be given a chance to address questions and concerns, and these will be brought forward to the county board for more in-depth presentation on December 14th. Bill apologizes, but he is unfortunately home with a sick child today, so he cannot be here. The documents, though, are lined up in your folders. You have the financial statements as well as the audit communication. The very broad level in the audit communication, you'll see that there was no material findings in the report, which was good news. A couple annotations there on the different journal entries that were made. And then the two items that appeared at the bottom that you would have seen with the CDBG housing, which we are addressing right now with Jason Glassbrenner and with Attorney Wendell, as well as then the departmental cash, which we're continuing to take actions on. So I would say, for sake of brevity, if there's questions or concerns that you have today or that you would like to be highlighted in the presentation on December 14th, that a motion to accept, and then we'll plan on having Bill Moyleen present to the county board in full on the evening of December 14th, Mr. Chair.
So I did take some time this morning to look through the audit report, but it's 70 pages plus a 15-page letter. So I really couldn't digest it. I am wondering if the committee would be amenable to postponing accepting this until December so that we can have just a little more time with it to read and then ask questions at our finance and personnel committee meeting, knowing that at the county board,
Sure.
getting in depth is not going to be a possibility.
Sure. Whatever you.
Is the committee okay with that generally?
Well, at what point does the auditor come forth and explain it?
Can he be at the December meeting?
Would you? He can be at both. I guess. Where would you like? Historically, he's got the presentation and some slides and some all things. Would you rather have that rolled out to finance and personnel or to the county board?
I think so. Do we have to choose one or the other, or can it be both?
It can be both. It would just be a regurgitation of the same information again. So
okay.
But I think that's good. In the past, we've had them come to both.
Okay. So I'll make the motion to postpone consideration of the audit report till our December meeting.
I'll second.
Oh,
Okay, we'll do a second by Luck. Any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favor of postponing, please say aye.
aye.
Opposed, say no.
Aye.
Okay. So you're in favor of postponing? Is that right, Mr.
No, I'm not in favor of postponing.
Oh, well then say no. Opposed, say no. That makes it easier
no.
because we have the delay sometimes. It's a little hard to tell.
So you're
I'm a no.
asking to approve the audit today?
Yes, I move it forward. No one's going to question this guy, so I'm not an auditor.
Supervisor Luck, I didn't hear your vote.
I said I'm in favor of postponing. I'm okay.
Okay.
I mean, either way, it's going to go to the December board meeting because we don't have a November board meeting. So
Right.
what's the difference?
Okay, so the motion to postpone till December carries. Okay, so on to agenda item number 9, compensation to the Phoenix Center for use of banquet hall.
So we're looking today for a motion to make payment to the Phoenix Center for use of the banquet hall for the county board meetings and county meetings in 2021 and to pay for all future uses of the banquet hall according to the partial day rates of the facility. Amy Shope, facilities manager, is tracking
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, we're just getting resituated here.
we've lost you.
Yep, no, that's we just took a brief pause here. Someone just needed to stretch.
background. Amy Shope, facilities manager, is tracking on Richland County utilizing the banquet hall. We've utilized the banquet hall 13 times to date in 2021. Partial day rate usage for this is $50. So looking for $650 for payments for this last year and then payments going forward. And then utilizing this out of the fund account 10-5-11-5111, which is the county board account, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to make this payment to the.
I will make that motion.
Okay,
And
motion.
I'll second, and then I have a comment.
Okay, motion by Brewer, second by Gentis, and then go ahead.
I heard many times people say we need a new place for us to meet as a county board. I don't know, I'd like to know how MIS feels about it, but when you think of building a new building and you think of this $50 a time, I think that's an ideal place for us to meet and public can come there. And I'm actually quite pleased that we do our committee meetings here and we have our our county board there.
Okay, thank you for that. And I want to clarify where this will come from. Under financial review, county board account fund number is listed, but then other funding source is checked and it says general fund balance.
Oh, my apologies. No, that should have been unchecked and scratched from a copy cut paste. I do apologize, Mr. Chair. That
Okay.
should be in adopted budget 105111.
Okay, so this comes out the county board account. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this one? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. To agenda item number 12 under personnel, utilization of bereavement leave for assignment center employee.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion. Simon's Auditorium Board made a motion to recommend to the Richland County Finance and Personnel Committee to allow Mark Thomas to use bereavement leave days per requested for the celebration of life in September of 2021. Background on this item is Mark Thomas is the maintenance supervisor at Simon's Recreation Complex. Mark's father passed away in October of 2020. His father lived in Tennessee where the COVID-19, the family decided not to have a funeral celebration of life. This September, Mark took a week vacation to visit his stepmom in Ohio, where he picked up some of his father's items and as the family celebrated his father's life. After Mark returned from his vacation, he stated he didn't get to use his bereavement leave. Dr. Gobin was not aware of the celebration of life until the payment had been submitted using vacation time. Simon's Auditorium Board didn't know how you define celebration of life. And with the extreme circumstances of COVID-19, the board felt this was within reason, made the motion to bring it to Personnel and Finance Committee. So the initial guidance from my office was that this did not kind of qualify, and that's based on the handbook language that we have. I'll pull that up here. So our language in bereavement doesn't do the best at kind of defining exactly the whens and wheres and hows. And so it's brought forward to kind of see if this is in the intentions of the language as the policymakers. The language we do have that we defer to is the amount of time taken off should be reasonably necessary under all circumstances, such as time required in order for employees to arrange for funeral of the deceased and to attend a funeral of the deceased is the language that we're currently using. Granted, this language maybe is kind of taken in context of more traditional burial funeral types of ceremonies in which body's prepared and there's a service and such within the following week or so. So I'm looking also, I guess I'm recommending that, and certainly condolences to Mark and his family. We make a recommendation to allow this, but at the same time, have a heads up that I'll probably be bringing bereavement language to try to better define what the intentions are and when it can be used, if that's the intent of the body. I mean, you can have this open and expansive, as there are certainly situations of bereavement and recognizing celebrations of life that extended out. Say if someone passes away in the wintertime, they want to wait until summertime, seasonal changes. There's certainly impacts that people have at a 1 year type of a anniversary of a death and all these types of things. But the challenge becomes administratively is to try to manage these times off and when bereavement can be used. If it's kind of left open on, it can be used, extensively for beyond in an undefined time frame and for causes that are reasonable. Well, then if you're pushing a reason, or what's reasonable, kind of then puts it on administration or yourselves as defining what is reasonable, and that kind of also then adds to frustrations of somebody that's lost a person and now has a boss or a committee of a boss putting merit then on their loss, and whether or not that's justifiable to have time off can lead to some very hard-pressed feelings and expectations. So I guess my recommendation today is to grant the bereavement leave, but at the same time then expect that we're going to come forward with some more defined uses on it. If the committee would rather go the other way and try to make it more open and expansive, I would say then that would kind of lead more to my argument on eventually getting us to the point of just simply having paid time off to use at a discretion, not have the continued definement of, is this bereavement, is this sick, is this vacation, and those types of conversations as we try to classify it. Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's just go around and let everyone give their opinion on this. I know I had a pretty strong opinion to this when I read it, so just want to let everyone load what their thoughts might be on this, especially with the era we're living in. Supervisor Gentis, you want to go ahead?
Well, after hearing our administrator talk, I'm changing my mind. I think it is good. I guess it's okay. I go with his recommendation, and also I think we should do better writing them.
Someone else is jumping in. I'm just going to throw in my opinion here. So, let's see. I had an aunt who passed away in April of 2020. It was right after COVID started. They just had her service in August of 2021. So that, and I didn't even think about this till after I read this. I was driving here. So that was a 15-month window. So I like the idea of giving this employee use of the bereavement leave. I also like the idea of PTO instead of trying to manage everyone's time and sick excuses and all of that. I do understand though why administratively, for the time being, if we have bereavement leave, got to put some sort of a window on it. You can't say my parent died 5 years ago and now I want to take the bereavement leave. So there's got to be some reasonable window, and maybe 15 months is too long. I don't know. But I can see why it needs to be better defined in our personnel handbook. I don't think that just if a family chooses not to have a funeral or a celebration of life, however people mourn, whether it's like going into the woods, on their own, or being with family, or having 100 people somewhere, I think we need to give employees that freedom to be able to decide how they mourn and to be able to use the bereavement leave that way. Not everyone might agree with that, but it's personal, I think. And
Mr. Chairman.
I don't like the airing of everyone's personal mourning and how they're doing it. So I think however we can accommodate our employees would be great. Mr. Brewer.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I think the exception should be granted and the administrator should be asked to work on some more expansive language. Things are changing.
Okay, thank you. Mr. C?
Yes, I certainly agree with the wisdom expressed by Chairman Brewer. In California, you can get bereavement leave for your pet. I think in some other states as well. It's a very personal and emotional kind of issue for folks. We had several people in my community who passed away during or just before the pandemic set in, and they still haven't had a celebration of life, but they're planning on it. Shouldn't their family members who are employed get leave to attend their bereavement? Sure, they should, I would think. So I think there's a little bit of discretion here, and I think that Mr. Langrick, with his wisdom and his experience, can come up with a policy that works. There's no prescription that works for everything. There's always an exception to the rule.
Okay, thank you, Mr. C. President Luck, do you have anything to add?
I'm in favor of allowing this person to use their bereavement, but I also agree that we should clarify the language a little better.
Okay, so Mr. Brewer, you stated it so succinctly and well. Can I take yours as the motion?
Pardon me.
Motion.
Did you say yes, Mr. Brewer?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we got a motion by Brewer and a second by Seep. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Everyone. Agenda item number 13, vacation extension, health and human services.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to approve extending the deadline for Brittany Wirtz to use her remaining accrued vacation until January 31st, 2022. Brittany is a county employee at Health and Human Services working in the Child and Youth Services Unit as a case manager. Child and Youth Services Unit is short on staff due to vacancy, which has caused a need for Ms. Wirtz to cover additional workload. As a result, Ms. Wirtz did not realize until last week that she still had 40 hours of vacation time. It must be used before November 13th, although not using up her vacation time was an oversight by Ms. Wertz. Health and Human Services needed to help her to help cover the portion of the workload in the Child and Youth Services unit until the vacancy is filled. Chair.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion on this one. This is a motion, I'll reread it, is to approve extending the deadline for Ms. Wertz to use her remaining accrued vacation until January 2022.
I'll make
Okay.
that motion for discussion.
We'll do a motion by Seep and a second by Brewer. So is there a discussion?
Well, I was approached by members of the administrator's office about a situation in which comp time was carried forward. Is this that situation, Administrator Langrick, or is that another issue?
I'm not tracking. I'd have to reach back to my staff.
Josh raised the issue and he's not there now, so. I don't think this is comp time, though. It doesn't appear to be.
We got Ms. Thorson on.
Mr. Chair, this is a request just for vacation time. This does not have anything to do with comp time.
Thank you.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of granting the extension, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Agenda item number 14, discussion and possible action on employee handbook, affirming revisions and updates.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a possible motion to affirm all previous changes to the Richland County Handbook and to accept the formatting changes to the Richland County Employee Handbook. If it's more appropriate to receive this as a report, the gist of this item is the attached draft that you saw in your folder and on the website. The Richland County Handbook is composed with efforts of capturing severally previously accepted changes in the past year. These are changes made by finance and personnel that went through county board. There are also several small formatting changes included. This included the changing of some of the formatting the cover. We also added in, correct me if I'm wrong, Cheryl, we added in the added positions that went into the listed department positions. Administration would like finance and personnel to affirm the content changes and accept the formatting changes. It is intended that changes worked through the Administrator Transition Committee will then be brought forward in December. The Assistant Administrator can also walk through on the formatting changes if there's additional questions, but kind of looking to approach this in a 2-month kind of a process of essentially affirming that this is the document as of today with the changes for you folks to be familiar with. So then next month, when we present the administrator changes, we can kind of show it with a markup type of a format. And you'd be able to see then the language changes impacting that. I would defer to Cheryl if there's any questions or anything that also needs to be added.
Okay, my understanding of this, I spent a little time with this morning, is that there were many copies of employee handbooks floating around, and you're just looking for, this is the copy we're starting with. So just acknowledging that so that they can start doing their work.
And I also added, there is footnotes now in every section showing where the change is, what the resolution is, so you're not digging back through papers. This is how the state keeps track of statutes. So it's just a good way to carry over so that you're not backtracking. You can see exactly where your changes are and when. And this one was created in January of 2012 when the union went away and all that language was taken out.
Did not notice that before. Thank you for pointing that out. When I was skimming through it, it's very tiny text. That's very helpful.
When were the footnotes inserted? When was that revision made?
So what they're presenting now is the revision with the little footnotes. And
Very good.
yeah, and this gets everything up to date currently. Doesn't mean the department job names are correct. That could be something that could be sent to the departments to make sure that people still exist, but that's with those changes.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, this is, let's see, we got a motion to affirm all previous changes to the employee handbook and to accept the formatting change. alternatively, we could say, a motion to accept this as the starting point.
Yeah, I'll move to accept this as a starting point and say I'm happy. Thank you for getting that started.
Okay, we got a motion by Gentis,
I'll second.
second by Luck. All those in favor, any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So thank you to staff for your work on keeping that going. That's a big job. Agenda item number 15, amendment to county administrator agreement regarding 2022 budget reductions. Mr. Langreich.
Mr. Chair, looking today for motion to accept proposed changes to the administrator's agreement. Background on this item is in response to the adopted 2022 budget. The following changes are proposed to the administrator's agreement. Below that, then in the summary, you'll see the section for salary. It is proposed that we strike that the employee shall receive a minimum increase of $1,900 in his annual salary at the beginning receive of the second year of his agreement, and that we're going to be then instead inserting language that says employee shall not receive a minimum increase according to the adopted 2022 budget process. According to the adopted 2022 budget process, and with consideration for the county having added an assistant to the administrator. And then we would still then have a language there of a third year with the employee receiving a $1,950 annual salary at the beginning of the third year of the agreement. The employee, as myself, does not object to these changes. You do have a closed session that is documented if you wanted to go into further depths of conversation in regards to compensations and work performance, and then also attached then as a full copy of the current agreement, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we waive the closed session and that we approve the amendment to the administrator's agreement.
Okay, motion by C,
I'll second.
second by Brewer. Any discussion on this motion?
I don't like it, but I'll go with it.
I myself, I didn't realize this was in the budget, 2022 adopted budget. So I think that was very, what did I say? I don't know if kind is the right word or, but of Mr. Langreich to.
He benefits greatly from by the fact that he has an outstanding administrative assistant now.
Concur. Thank you.
Well said. Okay,
That's the trade-off.
there's no further discussion on this. A motion to accept the proposed changes to the administrator's agreement. Does this go to the county board?
I don't think we
Stays
really.
here. Okay.
I don't think if we really have it defined, since it's not going to be an increased impact, I wouldn't see the need for it.
Got it. Okay. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. And so then through that motion, that skips us over agenda items number 16, 17, and 18. That takes us to agenda item number 19, discussion and possible action regarding the county strategic plan, chapters 1 and 2. And I'm just going to say here briefly, I'm sorry if I'm coming off a little too rushed today, but we only have 5 out of 7 people, and I know Mr. Brewer usually needs to leave a little bit before 3 o'clock. And this is probably the thing I spent the most time getting ready for.
I know.
And there's a lot of really good stuff in the draft strategic plan. And I also watched the last strategic planning meeting, and those folks are working really hard. And I just wanted to make sure that we were really giving them our thorough and honest opinion about where we think they are with the strategic plan right now. And a lot of parts of the strategic plan have to do with this committee, our finances and how we treat our employees here at the county. So I don't know if everyone had the benefit of getting to read it through thoroughly, and don't be shy if you weren't able to, and if you have any questions about what's where, because now we have a little extra time on our agenda where we can do that. But they're looking for comments by November, is it 19th? Is that the date, Mr. Langreich?
Yes, November 19th.
It is November 19th. So this is really the only meeting we have to do this. And I don't know exactly how to you know, we need to get them comments that this committee agrees on, so that they're not saying, well, you know, chair thinks this, but another committee member thinks that, and another committee member thinks that. We need to really give them a clear opinion. So I think as we go through these, I think we might just need to make motions and vote on them, so that we're real clear about what we're communicating to that committee, so we don't confuse the heck out of everybody. So I don't know if that's an okay introduction, but Mr. Langrick, you wrote something up, and I don't know if you want to go through that as well.
Yes, it's, well, it's an iteration, kind of the email that was released out last week, I believe, so.
That'd be great. Thank you for letting me just kind of give my own intro.
Correct. Yep. So essentially, we're asking for responses back from a department or a committee to address the following questions. A, after reviewing the draft chapters, what questions do you have with the language, or which sections could use further explanation to frame context? That's the first one. Second one is, in context of services that you help provide or oversee, in the case of the committee here, what concerns do you have with the drafted language? In context of the services you help provide or oversee, what recommended amendments, additions, or deletions would you offer to the chapter's content? Do keep in mind that there are additional chapters that are under development. In context of the services you help provide or oversee, do you see any conflicts with the drafted language in your current operations? And then finally, please add any additional comments that you think the Strategic Planning Committee should be aware of or consider. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we've got 2 chapters in our folder. We've got chapter 1, which is an overview, or they call it a framework. And then we've got chapter 2, which is strategic goals, which is really like the meat of the document. What would we actually be doing over the next however many years with the strategic plan? So how does the committee want to approach this? Do you want to give general overall comments, or should we walk through each chapter and try to do comments in order? Or, me personally, I'll share with you what I did, but we don't have to do it this way. I wrote down all the goals and the tactics. It was, oh no, I just wrote down the goals. And then I just had comments just on certain goals. So I think there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goals I had comments on. So we could walk through the goals one by one and organize it that way. But what do folks think? I don't know where you all are at. Maybe Supervisor Luck, if you're quiet, it might be because you're on the strategic planning committee, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would make one comment as a member of that committee. In my mind, one of the things that I'm looking for, well, I should preface that to say that the strategic planning committee has really clarified what we're aiming to accomplish with the strategic plan, and that is that we really are attempting to look very inward in the next couple years and really work on some very basic functions, efficiencies. You know, a lot of it has to do with finances, getting our finances in order and figuring out how we're going to move forward in our current financial situation. So we don't want the plan to become too grandiose. We want it to be pretty focused. We've talked a lot about staying focused. On the other hand, my thought is that there are going to be certain groups of people within the county that do have to be very focused and are going to be doing a lot of work to help us accomplish our financial obligations and goals. But I think there's a lot of other people with the other employees and departments within the county that could offer other goals that aren't all just focusing on the terrible financial condition we're in. I mean, to be honest. So I really wanted it to go out to committees because I felt like the committees could really give us some general or actually very specific goals that can be attained that are not necessarily just cutting your budgets and cutting, you know, becoming more efficient with your staff, which those are all very important. But I did want to hear some of our goals that might not necessarily pertain to those very specific inward looking things. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
Okay. So with that being said, though, I think that we do very much want you also to look at the questions that Clint is asking, in that, you know, do we agree with the direction that the strategic planning committee has come with this document? You know, that we do want to be very focused and mostly, and you're right, this committee is going to be handling a lot of the financial, or the staff will be reporting a lot of our financial strategic goals, you know, through this committee. So I think both are important, but I would be interested in hearing of other financial or personnel related goals that we might have.
Yep, we have Mr. Seep and then Ms. Gentis.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate very much all of the thought and work that's gone into this plan. I am sort of waiting to hear from the various department heads to their committees what their issues are, what their ideas are. A little bit, we're putting the cart before the horse, because have we heard from any of those committees yet?
Well, everyone's getting this at the same time, Mr. Seep.
That's right.
So, no, we haven't. And I myself, I have some specific feedback as it relates to finance and personnel. So I don't want to take up our time talking about process too much, because I think it's great they're asking everyone their opinion.
So, you mean we're going to make the decisions here before we hear from the committees?
We are one committee out of 20 committees at the county, and we're giving our opinion about what we think of their draft strategic plan. So we're just giving our viewpoint here. We don't have to wait for everyone else to talk before we can talk. But yeah, Ms. Gentis, you.
I'm not quite sure where we start with
Okay.
all this.
Yeah.
I mean, I read every bit. I have lots of things underlined and that I have no real problems with the wording and how it's drafted. I think it's very clear and I like it, and I like to keep that. I'm just going to go to the heart of our problems, the financial problems, and under the business of the county, it's very hard for us to make these hard choices. And of course, I do not feel that we have not been not guiding the county as best we could with the problems with the finances, and we've been borrowing for capital. And obviously the biggest problem is we have a lot of non-mandated things that we want in this community, and we have to decide if we want to keep those. But we also have a lot of mandated things, such as Marcy's Law recently, that is not funded by the state, and which puts a huge burden on us. And I don't see in the strategic plan how we need to address the state more about why this is happening to us, because we know that we've gone from 40% to 26% funding from the state. So I think we have to, somewhere in here, not only make these hard decisions, and I know I'm on one committee that has to make a huge hard decision, but I think we have to discuss referendum, going to the community and finding out what we can do to make sure that we are servicing our public, but also figuring out how we will lobby and work with the counties association and try to really make it clear that we're not doing things wrong, that we are not funded properly.
Okay, so I heard two things in there, and if I get this wrong, just interrupt me and let me know. But one suggestion I heard was for us as a county board to take a position on state-imposed levy limits, and then lobby our state representatives based on that. Got that right? Okay, so if this doesn't go well, we can do it a different way, but I'll take that as a motion to say that this committee would like that added, and let's see if there's a second and see what the committee thinks. Are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Okay, because I would second that. I think that's something we need to look at. So a motion by Gentis and a second by myself. So any discussion on a motion to include language to that effect?
I would support that motion.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, so that motion carries. So that's one opinion of this committee. Yeah, I don't know. Supervisor Brewer, are you still there? Oh, I see it says Richland County in the lower right-hand part of our screen.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
Oh.
I'm here for one more second, and we've got to reduce expenses either through personnel or buildings. The county has too many buildings that it operates. And we always harken back to Act 10, how our hands are tied, we can't do anything. Well, I hate to think where we'd be if it weren't for Act 10. We might be so far beyond where we are now in spending that it would be totally out of control. So in a way, Act 10 gives us a fallback, and we can say, well, hey, it's not our fault, our hands are tied. So we need to come up with creative solutions and not just throw our hands in the air and say it's not our fault, because we are the guys and girls who are elected to make these tough decisions, and we're going to have to make them in the oncoming year. So goodbye. I believe.
Thank you.
Is that a yes or a no?
I don't know, but no, it's good to know what your opinions are. So thanks.
Can I just say that I don't feel like I'm throwing my hands up in the air. I agree we have to make a tough decision, but I also agree that it has not been a fair playing field with no tax increase and no money.
Okay, so then the second thing I heard, and maybe I'll ask, so Supervisor Luck, do you think what Mr. Brewer said is addressed right now in the draft strategic plan? Or do you think to get at what he was saying, we'd need to add something?
No, I think it's there. I mean, that's really the sole focus.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you. So then the second thing I heard from your comments was a referendum for increased taxes. I know that this gets debated. I think there's people on both sides of this issue. So maybe we just need to debate it, and talk about whether we want it in the strategic plan. Did you all talk about that at all as part of this?
No, that has not been talked about at all.
Okay, I've heard different opinions from Mr. Seat. I think I have a different opinion than him. I might agree with you, Ms. Gentis. So what do folks want to do with this one? I wonder. Supervisor Luck, do you have an opinion? I don't know if I've ever heard yours on this one.
I think my opinion changes depending on how frustrated I am with our lack of funds. I guess a part of me is like, let's just put it out there. I feel like the likelihood of success is extremely low. So it may be a wasted effort and cost, because I believe there's cost associated with referendums. But I think the reality is that we are asked to function with, we're asked to do more and more, and we can't raise taxes. And we don't have growth to cover our needs. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not being very helpful, but I don't know.
That's okay. Maybe Mr. Seat wants to persuade you against it, because if we vote on this, we might have a tie vote. So, Mr. Seat, that was your opening.
Yes, thank you. No, none of us has prescriptions that's going to solve all of our problems. We have to put our heads together to do this, and we probably need outside help. In the manufacturing business, when they have problems with inefficiencies, they hire efficiency engineers, and they do time studies, and they measure production, measure wages. Before we go out to the community and ask for a referendum, we must be in a position to demonstrate clearly that we are doing everything we can in terms of efficiencies internally. That's why we hired county administrator to help us manage systems, manage finances, manage personnel, manage production, and manage our relationship with the community. It's a big job. It's a hell of a lot of responsibility. He needs more help than we're giving him now, and there's funds available. But I think it's very important that we look internally at various departments and operations, determine how much efficiency is there. Some of those departments are less transparent than others. Others are outstanding. But there are always, it's always good to look at an operation with fresh, experienced eyes that can find inefficiencies and unnecessary expenses in various operations. We need people to come in and look at a department and do a task analysis to actually measure the time and motion of that office.
So I'm gonna, since this is so fresh. in my head-
That would precede our going out for a referendum.
Okay, so since this is really fresh in my head, there is a goal called prioritize service over staffing. It addresses what you're talking about. And a couple of the maybe more relevant questions would be listed here is, how does current staffing compare to peer counties? Should we stop providing the service or position? Can you collaborate with other entities on cost sharing this position or contract it out to a consultant for a short period? So what you're saying, Mr. Seep, it is addressed already in the draft strategic plan.
That's right.
Now, the way this is all laid out right now is it doesn't lay out a first this, then that goal.
Right.
Although, will the work plan address that, Supervisor Luck? You all are talking about creating a work plan?
Yeah, there will absolutely be a work plan, and the work plan will have a timeline associated with each goal, so you will be able to see the steps. You know, there'll be some items will be 2022, some will be 2023. So in that respect, you'll be able to tell.
Got it. Okay, that's really helpful. So I'm thinking of maybe the language for this one that we could, tell me what you think. Explore the possibility of an operating referendum to maintain current county operations. Okay, so can we take that as a motion?
Yes.
Okay,
I'll
that's a
amend my motion.
that's a motion from you, and I'll second the motion. So any discussion on that language?
I would support that motion with discussion.
Go ahead.
It takes a lot of fortitude on the part of the county employees and a part of the county commissioner, the county board, to go to the community and ask for a referendum. We must have the courage to do that if that's where we have to go. School districts do it all the time. All I'm saying is that and I'm in favor of it, when we're ready, but we're not ready until we have our own house in order internally.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, go ahead.
So I agree with Don. I think that we need to go through this internal, the next couple of years needs to be spent on this very focused effort we have in the strategic plan. And at that point, we should be able to know exactly where we stand and whether or not we can function within our current financial, and know whether we need to go to a referendum. So I would agree with Mr. Seep on this one. I don't think we should be talking about referendum until we accomplish at least the first couple of years. And our strategic plan really is only going for 2 to 3 years. I mean, we've decided to be very, very short term and focused with this first strategic plan.
I'm ecstatic that you don't disagree with me.
So the way that was stated, it kind of gives the strategic planning committee the latitude to put it low on the priority list in the work plan or later on the calendar. Would you agree with that,
Yes, it shouldn't be on the front burner. at this point.
Supervisor Luck, do you agree with that?
Yeah, as long as it's really clear that we want to make sure we go through all those other evaluations before we get to the point where I don't want people working on the idea of a referendum until we've done everything else.
Okay, so I think you all have the latitude for how to fit it in. That language is pretty loose to explore the possibility. It doesn't say do it, just says look into the possibility. Okay, so there's no further discussion on that one. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Say no.
Okay, all right, so that motion fails then because we don't have four. We need four. Everyone has got to agree to do any of this. Yep, go ahead.
I just want to know when, there's a lot of bullets here. Are they in order or are they just bullets?
That's a good question. I think they tend to be in order of kind of how you would go about doing it, but I don't know if we've actually discussed in detail because we haven't gotten to our work plan yet. We're just going to be beginning to do the work plan in this next meeting. So I think when we start to flesh that out, we will know for sure what they're in.
Because one of them is for the tactics, and I was on zoning. Oh.
Is she still talking? I can't hear.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying, with the last vote on the items, and correct me if I'm wrong with parliamentary procedure on it, but I think it's a simple majority of those present at the meeting. So a 3-to-1 vote would carry the motion, to the best of my knowledge.
I would agree.
Mr. Seep, is that true? That's
Agree.
true. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, I had that wrong. I'm sorry. I thought I read that somewhere, but I don't know that much.
Well, shares make it.
We do have a quorum, but I thought everyone would have to vote.
Shares are capable of making an error on occasion.
For sure, absolutely.
Okay, so
Sorry for the interruption.
Let me rewind
All right.
and correct myself and say that motion carried. The one on exploring the possibility of an operating referendum. Because I was in favor of it, and I think if I wouldn't have been in favor of it, it would have been a 2-to-2 vote, and then that would have failed. Am I right there?
Correct. You need a majority.
Okay,
yes.
so can you back up where you were? And I apologize.
Sorry for interrupting. I just didn't know if it was going to change the context of the conversation you're having.
Okay, so under tactics,
which set of tactics? There's a lot of them.
yeah, we're under growth. Maintain investment on page 8.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so they have number 1, the home construction. I'm on the zoning committee, and there were 6 applications for new homes this past recently. So we are not having new homes in the area. And I personally believe, just want to put this out there, that we need broadband before we do anything, because that will ensure that people would want to build all around the county and can have businesses throughout the county. I just like to make that a strong goal or tactic. I have a lot of other things, but that's who I would want.
So similarly, when I was reading through that, I noted that word prioritize.
Yeah.
In front of new home construction.
Yeah.
And then the second bullet point was not stated as strongly. It just said encourage improvements to existing property. And I guess I questioned that too. I thought, not that I don't want new home construction, but why are we prioritizing new home construction over making sure that our existing houses don't fall apart and are left behind? So for me, that was just a question mark. Should the word prioritize be there? Did you all talk about that, Supervisor Luck, in any detail, or should we know something that we don't know?
No. I mean, that was how it was originally written by Troy, and I don't know that we had any discussions about the wording of this particular section.
So
From
do we
a-
want to take an opinion on that as a committee? I know that, you know, the amount of taxes coming in helps or doesn't with our budget. And so that might affect. Yeah, Mr. Seat, did you have an opinion?
Yes, I do have an opinion. I believe that two things go hand in hand. I don't subscribe to the argument that if you build houses, jobs will come. My feeling is that if you create jobs, you encourage and nurture industry. Pittsburgh is a good example. People will come to work and they'll build houses. I think they go hand in hand. The encouragement and the development of industry goes hand in hand with the growth of housing. Secondly, I agree fully that there's a lot of rehab that can go on in our downtown area and in Richland Center proper in terms of housing. There are a lot of houses that could be rehabbed, a lot of buildings that rehab for housing as well. Don't buy the notion that if you build a block or several blocks of $300,000 homes that you're going to bring workers in the community. You're not.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to remove the word prioritize in that tactic and replace it with encourage. The nature of my motion is to put them on an equal playing field, those two bullet points.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, well, we got a motion by myself and second by Gentis. Any further discussion on that? So remove the word prioritize in the first bullet point and replace it with encourage, word encourage. Okay, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Got any more for us, Linda?
I got all sorts of.
Okay.
Me too. Mr. Chairman, can we have a 3-minute break?
Let's check and see where people are with schedules today. Does anyone need to be leaving to go anywhere else?
No, but I wouldn't mind going to the restroom. If that's what
Okay,
Mr. Seek was aiming for.
Let's take a 3-minute break for restroom.
We may have to stretch that third minute.
Okay, 3 to 4 minutes. So I'm under the goal improve financial practices. And I think there's maybe two things missing here, my opinion, at least. It's improve financial practices, which is the first goal. Second, I don't know if I'm saying this right. Is it the first strategy and the second goal? I don't know. Chapter 2, and I am under organizational structure, which is that the first strategy. You guys are luck. And
Yeah, I don't know. You're on page 5, right? Middle of page 5?
Thank you. Yes. Top of page 5. Oh yeah, middle of page 5. Yep, that's where I'm at. Thanks for following along, everybody. So one, I think, is I've been harping on this for a few years, and I know that we're already going in this direction, but it could be good to get down creating an easy to read budget. That's my first one. And then my second one was to track finances more closely. So general fund balance, year-end results. Those are my two ideas. I think they're potentially. I'm under improve financial practices. And there are 5 tactics. And I don't think the 2 things I just read are in the tactics right now. And I'm arguing that they should be added. Okay, so the first one would be, I don't know if this is exactly the right wording, but create easy to read budget.
Good.
Not that any budget is ever easy to read, but I compiling all the different documents into one book so that things aren't all in different places. So I guess I'll make that a motion to add that, or to recommend adding that, probably the better language. Guess so. Just let's see if everyone agrees or not. Yeah. Okay. So second by Gentis. Any discussion on that one?
I support it.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. We got everyone in favor of that one. And then the second one was track finances more closely. And for example, general fund balance, year ends. It's like kind of like different funds or departments. Where are they at the end of the year? What happened? Did they go over? Did they go under? That's what I mean by track finances more closely. In general fund balance, we usually find it out 10 months. Yes, we're still under.
Before you leave that.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Can you turn your mic on though so everyone can hear?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
I think that's very important to have a monitoring and a serious program of monitoring budgets at the department level. And that there should be very specific tools that's tied to having easy to read budgets. Because every department, a lot of departments have a different budget format to present. Some of them are from computer programs that are a foreign language to a lot of lay persons. And so that lack of tools, that lack of easy to read budgets makes it difficult for some committees and members to get a good handle on that puzzle. That's what it is for a lot of people. It's just a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, and so instead of challenging it, there's a tendency to pass over and say, "Well, accept what the department head tells you. Things are going well here. We're doing a good job. We're ahead." You don't know that unless you can look at the numbers and have the tools to do it. So very good point on your part.
Okay, so I might.
How are you gonna say that? Because I have something to maybe add.
Okay, so I would say it as track finances more closely. For example, general fund balance, year-end results. Those are my two examples.
Okay, I think this is too detailed. That's okay. I know I hear a lot of complaints about Health and Human Services not understanding when they come in with a contract update and then they're saying, oh, it's covered. And people don't understand, what does that mean? And so maybe that's a separate, you understand?
I think it's very related to this,
Yeah.
you know, these 2 points.
So we also want to have how other funding is tracked too, or increase funding from other.
Well, a budget book that has everything in it would have funding that comes from our property and sales tax, but also funding that comes from the federal and the state governments. It would all be in there, and it keeps track of it in separate fund numbers based on where the revenues come from.
Yeah.
So I do think what the example you're bringing up could be covered by by probably both bullet points if we add both of these. So, okay, I'll make mine formal that I'd add that language. So it would be track finances more closely. For example, general fund balance, year-end results. Those are two separate things. Does anyone want to second that?
Oh, I'll second it. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
second. No, thank you. And then there's no more discussion. All those in favor of that one, please say aye.
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 So all of us are in favor of that one. I'll just do one more because I'm trying to prioritize just like you were. I just thought overall, under the growth section, which is the fifth one, and I'll find the page number. Folks
Can
here.
we go back to the section you're in?
Yep. Oh yeah, we can come
Okay.
back after.
I'm not sure where this is, but I think it's so important about grant funding. We talk about grant funding, but I don't know if we're counting on Clint to just do all that. Who's writing the grants in the county? I know Health and Human Services, but there are lots of funds that we can be hearing about. I don't know how we get the grant, how we get those written.
So I'll just read the two bullet points that
Yeah.
they've got. One of them says, and I'm at the bottom of page 5 now.
Yeah.
Analyze the county's indirect rate to capture highest possible amount of grant funding. Okay. And then this next bullet below that, increase discretionary and variable revenue source, fines, fees, grants, etc., as a portion of the overall budget. So they've already got it in there. Now they'll handle the who in the work plan. Is that right? So that's still
Yes,
coming.
that's right.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead.
In front of the remark about who's handling, who's writing the grants, where are they being written. One of the things that I've noticed over the years on various committees is that a department like the Health and Human Service takes a great deal of internal experience and expertise to write a grant for that particular discipline, whereas it takes a whole other skill set, perhaps, to write a grant for, say, land conservation. So it's pretty hard to focus on the idea of having one person who's the grant writer, you know. That's where you were, if that's what you were getting at, or were you getting some sort of a paradigm for grant writing?
Well, I know that there are a few grant writers, and there has been one in town who has, I don't know if she's still around, who has written quite varied grants for food and science and Pine River, a whole variety of things. So I think it's something we just need to look at, which would be in the work plan that Melissa mentioned.
Well, you're saying, I see what you're saying. Some can be in-house and some can be with outside expertise. Some has to be in-house because
Okay. Yeah, no, that's okay. That's good. I'm just trying to think. I just wanted to just do one more maybe, but I don't know which is more important, but I just thought the growth section, maybe I'll just stick with that one. I just thought it was, to me, it seemed a little too focused on, I don't even know if we should go through a formal change. It's just like one comment. It just seemed a little too focused on growth to me and not enough on like the outdoors or what actually does attract a lot of people to this area. I was thinking of, I saw someone's comment about, this was on Facebook, about light pollution coming from Richland Center, and the stars were couldn't see them as well out in the country. And thought that is, I mean, a lot of people want to come here for that reason. They don't necessarily want Richland County to grow so much it becomes like a metropolis, you know. So I know that the very last tactic in that growth section is capitalizing on the county's natural beauty and recreational opportunities through the investment and marketing of county parks, campgrounds, and recreational opportunities. But kind of to the point about, are these in order? Because it came last, and if it was after all that other stuff, it kind of seemed like it wasn't as important, or that like we'll just take growth at all costs just so we can just, you know, keep taxes low and keep all our services, you know. And I think what actually people like about this area, at least the majority of them, a lot of people moving here and a lot of people who stay, is they love the outdoors. You don't want to ruin that with
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I will just comment that we have had extensive conversations about what kind of growth we want. And it has really been about balanced has been a word we've used a lot, balanced growth. So balancing exactly what you're talking about, that we're not trying to turn into a city of 100,000 people in Richland County, because that's not what, that's not sustainable. That's not what people are moving here for. So we've had a lot of conversations, and I'm sorry that it isn't coming through in this document. So it's good. I think it would be good to bring that up just so that we could maybe go back over that and make sure that the discussions that we've had about a balanced growth come through more clearly.
You want that to be something formal coming from this committee?
Sure, why not? I mean, that way, I think it's good for us to know that it's more that other committee or other supervisors also think that a balanced growth is important. That we don't want to just become something we're not, just to bring in money.
Okay, so I guess I'd make it a motion to better balance growth with a focus on the outdoors.
Well,
It's not exact language, it's just kind of more an issue.
Yeah, that'll get the conversation going. I think that's fine.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, yep.
can I try to add a little dimension?
Go, yeah, word it better than I did.
No, I would suggest that, but over the years, there has been the development of a county comprehensive plan. Each township has developed a comprehensive plan. The Land Conservation Committee and the Parks Commission have developed and they're required to update it every so often. I know it's every 2 or 3 years or every 5 years, a comprehensive plan with great visions toward highlighting and conserving beautiful natural resources. You make a good point. We have so much to offer here in the Driftless area. We have the best trout streams in the United States right here in Richland County. We have so many other great natural resources that are right in front of us, and because we're here, we don't see them. So they're a very important part of this balanced growth, and perhaps we are not doing enough as a community in cooperation with others to highlight the great attractions we have here in Richland County, part of the whole Driftless area. So I think that's a very important issue. Balanced approach to this. We're never going to be a thriving metropolis full of industry. We don't have the infrastructure, railroad, off the beaten path in terms of transportation, highway transportation. We'll never get a freeway through here, I don't think. And so here we are. We're pretty isolated. Other things we'll have to do besides building new houses and hoping somebody will come.
And I guess I'd say, like, why not just build on our strengths, and we might end up making more money off that in the long run anyway, instead of trying to become something we're not.
Well, everybody I know who's moved here in the last 20 years has moved here because of the country. I mean, I can name at least 30 or 40 families.
Because of what?
Because of the countryside in the Driftless area.
The beauty.
Yeah.
Natural resources.
So it might just be kind of the way it's framed. The way it's framed kind of makes it sound like bring in new businesses, build a bunch of new houses, then our tax base will go up. But if it was a little more framed like, focus on what's so great about Richland County, and that will attract a lot of people. But keep the identity the way it is so that we don't, try to become even like a Cross or a Reedsburg, or let's keep our identity. That's, I guess, just another way I'd kind of say it, but the wording was balanced growth with focus on outdoors.
Mr. Chair, I forgot the name of the researcher, but it was called the Donut Hole many years ago. And that was this area that were the black skies, and it was very desirable.
Okay, and then one other that we got, and thankfully, Mr. Langrek reminded me that Supervisor Turk shared an email. He thought that the only gap that he noticed, he says, and perhaps it's implied, if not explicitly stated, is to address the IT needs of our county operations. Coordinated plan across departments could be more efficient and effective than the improvised MIS structure and operational processes that have evolved over the last few years. This issue will only increase in importance with our efforts to improve public access to government and the need to constantly protect our data and IT systems from threats and failures. He had nothing else but good stuff to say, but that was the gap he thought. There's something with IT missing. So we could forward this email. We could get a little survey here. Do people generally agree that something about IT needs to be added?
I didn't think about it, but I think it does. I like the way he's worded it. Maybe forward the email. I think that also goes along with the broadband situation. And that's a major thing that's prohibiting anyone from actually moving here.
Okay, so how about we'll do a motion by me and a second by you to address IT needs. And the language, I'll forward his email for you, Supervisor Luck, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, and do you agree with that too, Mr. Seat? Is something to add? We'll just say it's a motion and a second. I just want to see if you're okay.
I'm okay.
Okay, then all those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So we've got IT addressed. Anything else that's missing?
I have something I'd like to talk about.
Yeah, go for it.
So under, I guess it would be under, sorry, I'm just, invest in the education of county board supervisors and invest or deepen staff training and leadership and management. I had brought up at the last strategic planning committee, and so I just wanted to bring it before you now so that to get your thoughts on it too. But I was thinking that it would be good for us to include some kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion training for both our, well, for sure for our department heads, but I would think that our the county board supervisors could probably benefit from such training as well. And I just wanted to get the committee's thoughts on if you think that's important, if that's something we should be adding as a goal or not.
So Supervisor Gentis is nodding her head and Mr. Seep has his hand up.
I think it's highly important and a very, very good priority among our other priorities. I think we need to work hard to provide good board education with regard to diversity to our new board members, as well as our staff and our department heads, some in particular more than others. That's vitally important. It reduces the risk to the county. Talk about risk management. That's a great investment in risk management. Then scheduled way time to orient both our board members, staff, field of diversity.
Okay.
Very good suggestion.
If that was a motion, I second it.
Okay, so motion by Melissa. Can you restate it?
Can you actually, I would like it if the motion came from someone else.
Okay, we'll do it from Supervisor Gentis.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure I know what else. I
But
know what
can
you're saying.
Can you
but
restate what you
Yeah.
said before just succinctly?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that we should add a tactic under both invest in education of county board supervisors, and deepen staff training and leadership and management. Under each of those, I think we should add a bullet that includes training for diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are people that come in and do these just as a background. There are people that come in that can do these trainings that I've heard from many different people are very, very good. And
We've had excellent people at the campus on that. So I make that motion without all that.
Yep, it's to include diversity, equity, and inclusion, training on that under those two areas.
Two areas.
Yep.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion by Gentis, second by Seep. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good, Melissa.
Those say no, so that one carries.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Any last things people want to get in? We have a lot to work with from this committee. Okay. Well, thanks for spending the time. We spent about almost an hour doing that. So hopefully it was time well invested and it helps you all out. You guys are left. So agenda item number 20, discussion and possible action regarding strategic goals, tracking, administration.
As an update, Mr. Chair, cutting to the chase, in your document, you would have saw an updated kind of a calendar tracker on our strategic goals that were put in place at the beginning of this session. Going down through them, we have continued action on a strategic long-term plan that we're, as we just worked on. Transformation from finance to HR in the county clerk's office, we've completed on that one. Making resolutions available by ordinance and organized on the internet. We have continued development on that one as Clerk Kalish does have a vendor and quote, and we have anticipation of using ARPA funds for that. It needs to be brought forward to the committee here to kind of finalize that as we move forward with that, and then onto the county board. 4, 6, and 7 were kind of put at a dead end to make room for other priorities that are coming up. Implementation of uniform performance review program, that's kind of been sidelined yet. I do have some development on it as they're beginning to reschedule meetings, and I'm hoping to get through all the department heads by the end of April, the end of the session. New county board orientation program, I do have a draft on that plan as well as an agenda that is kind of being put together, and then finding the right path for that to get to the county board is yet to be determined, but we do have action on that. Full review of county employee handbook. We took a big step here today of affirming actions that we previously had, hoping then in December to cross the path then into recommendations with the change in government to administrator and getting complete on that. 10, 11, and 12 partner with Southwest Regional Planning and Development. We are partnered and working continually with them. Development of a policy to address complaints. We did that. Development of compensation classification plan. We do have that in December. Also, please anticipate that coming back to you with the additional changes that we made to compensations, including the increases of the near 7% for general employees, the different impacts with Pine Valley, as well as our different authorization table adjustments with the added positions. With that being said, too, as we know, moving forward into the 2023 budget already, a significant amount of time is going to have to be designated to put in a long-term kind of a financial plan, be able to build a back plan and build a 2023 budget. So I'm hoping that we can kind of address these. I do keep in mind that projects like working with a grant for the child centers and such of those things do have impacts on trying to complete these by the end of the session. Mr. Chair.
It's great to see everything that's being worked on, and it's
amazing.
good to push back sometimes when we have too many ideas. So it's hard to hear sometimes, but it's you bring a real perspective, and you just have to keep reminding us. So it's great. Do we have a motion before us on this one?
Motion just to accept.
Okay.
Accept as a report.
Looking for a motion to accept.
I'll move to accept.
Okay. Motion by Gentis.
I'll second.
Second by Seep. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that one carries. And does anyone have future agenda items?
No.
There was a comment that you had earlier, Supervisor Gentis, regarding future board meetings
Yes.
with MIS. Was that intended as a future agenda item? You had
You mean
mentioned
whether it's a complication to have it there?
well, context of of where the future county boards are going to be meeting. You said that you liked having committee here and board there.
Yeah,
I didn't
okay,
know if
we
you
can
wanted
talk
that.
about that in the future. That would
That's
be,
something that would,
yes.
is appropriate to come back through
yes,
this body.
yes, that would be. I agree. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Yes,
Mr. Seat?
I would like to see a discussion on the agenda, on a future agenda for some sort of a uniform system of maybe developed by the people from finance and accounting office. Every department has a different way of submitting their expenses or their budgetary expenses for the month. Some just report it verbally. If you've ever been to Pine Valley, give you 3 or 4 pages typed out, a list of all the vouchers, what was spent, every dime that was spent on everything. And I think there needs to be presented before each committee a document, rather uniform, that lists the expenditures that department for the month, or at least share. Health and Human Services, every board member signs that document before it goes.
Okay, so
Or
some
not.
sort of a universal system for financial tracking and budgetary expenses. Any others? Okay, Supervisor Luck, do you have any? Okay, all right, so that takes us to agenda item, thank you for those, by the way. It takes us to agenda item number 22, adjournment. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, December 7th at 1 p.m.
Also move.
Motion by Gentis,
A second.
second by Luck.
Okay.
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All in favor. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the time investment this afternoon with us. Hope it was really enjoyable. Sorry I had to butt in and